Danny wiped down the hood with the same cloth he used on every car. Routine, automatic. He had done it 2,000 times. He wasn't thinking about anything in particular when he reached through the window and popped the glove box. It fell open. He looked inside. He looked away, looked back. Then he picked up the first page and read it. Read it again. His hand stopped moving. The car was a 1987 Volvo that had been sitting in Lot 7 for 11 months with a price tag nobody took seriously. Rusted wheel arches, cracked dashboard, the kind of car that comes in on a trade and sits until someone decides it's time to send it to the crusher. Danny had been told to clean it up for the auction list, vacuum it out, wipe it down, make it presentable enough to justify the paperwork. He was not supposed to find 40 years of driving logs in the glove box. He was not supposed to find what was underneath them. And he was definitely not supposed to find the photograph at the very bottom that would keep him awake for 3 nights and eventually bring a woman to the dealership who had been trying to find out what happened to her father since 1986. Who owned this car? And why had they disappeared? Drop your city in the comments right now. And if you believe that some answers hide in the most ordinary places for the most extraordinary reasons, subscribe. Because what Danny found in that glove box was only the beginning. The dealership was called Harmon Motor Sales, and it sat on the edge of Tulwick, a town of 8,000 people in rural Ohio that had once had a furniture factory and now had a Dollar General and a memory of the furniture factory. 3 generations of Harmons had run the place. The grandfather who started it in 1959, the father who expanded it in the 1980s, and now the son, Greg Harmon, who managed it with the particular exhaustion of someone who inherited something they didn't entirely choose and had decided to make it work anyway. Danny Reeves was 26 years old. He had been working at Harmon Motor Sales for 2 years, since coming back to Tulwick after a stint in Columbus that hadn't resolved into anything particular. He was a detail technician, which meant he cleaned cars inside and out, with a thoroughness that Greg Harmon appreciated and paid for at slightly above minimum wage. He was good at the work, patient, methodical, careful with interiors. He had a system. He had always had a system for things, which was something his mother said was his best quality and his last girlfriend said was his worst. And the truth was, probably somewhere in between. He was not especially curious by nature. He did not go looking for things. He cleaned cars because cleaning cars was the job. And he did it well because doing it well was the only way he knew how to do anything. And that was the sum total of his relationship to his work. The 1987 Volvo 240 in Lot 7 was not a car anyone at Harmon Motor Sales felt strongly about. It had come in 11 months ago as part of an estate sale package. A lawyer handling the affairs of a deceased man named Robert Callum, 81 years old, no surviving family, a house full of furniture going to auction, and a car going to whoever would take it. Greg Harmon had taken it because estate packages sometimes contained surprises, and this one had contained a 2019 Honda Civic in excellent condition that had made the whole transaction worthwhile. The Volvo had been the thing no one wanted, sitting in the estate garage under a tarp, tires flat, battery dead. Greg had put it in Lot 7 and given it a price tag of $800 and largely forgotten about it. 2 interested parties had looked at it in 11 months. Neither had made an offer. Last Tuesday, Greg had decided it was time for the auction list. He told Danny to clean it up, make it presentable. That was Tuesday morning. Danny got to it on Thursday afternoon. He started outside. Pressure wash first, which revealed that the Volvo was dark blue under the oxidation and road grime, a color he hadn't been able to determine from looking at it dirty. The body had rust at the wheel arches and along the lower door panels, but the steel was solid underneath, not eaten through, the rust of a car that had lived in a wet climate and been maintained well in spite of it, rather than neglected entirely. The glass was intact, all 4 windows. The windshield had a crack in the lower right corner that had been there long enough to develop secondary cracking at both ends, but hadn't propagated further, which meant it had either been there a very long time or the car had been in a controlled environment. He noted all of this. He had a clipboard he used for condition assessments, a habit Greg found excessive but tolerated because Danny's assessments were always accurate and saved arguments with buyers later. He wrote down the rust locations, the crack, the tire condition, the brake light that was out on the passenger side. He moved inside. The interior was dark blue cloth, matching the exterior, the fabric worn thin on the driver's seat in the pattern of someone who had spent a lot of time in it. The carpet was faded but clean, not the clean of something recently attended to, but the clean of something maintained over years, vacuumed regularly, treated with care. The dashboard had a crack running the length of the top, which was standard for a Volvo of this age left in temperature variation, and the plastic was bleached slightly in the area behind the steering wheel where 40 years of sun had reached it through the windshield. On the back seat, nothing. On the front passenger seat, nothing. In the door pockets, the driver's side held a small flashlight, batteries presumably dead, and a pocket-sized road atlas from 1994 with some pages folded at corners. The passenger side door pocket held a packet of tissues, unopened, and a tire pressure gauge. Danny logged all of it, photographed it, moved to the center console, empty except for a mint tin containing 3 coins, 2 quarters, and a dime, and a key that didn't belong to a car. He reached across to the glove box, pressed the release button. The door swung down. Inside, a stack of papers held together with a binder clip. Below the papers, a smaller bundle, rubber-banded. And below that, face down, a photograph. He picked up the stack of papers first. They were driving logs. He recognized the format immediately. He had kept similar records himself during a period in his early 20s when he was trying to track his fuel efficiency, a project that had lasted about 4 months before he lost interest. Date, starting location, destination, mileage, time. The logs went back, he flipped to the bottom of the stack, to 1984. Not 1984 as in a couple of early entries at the bottom, 1984 as in the earliest entry in a continuous record that ran from April 12, 1984 to October 3, 2022. 38 years of driving logged in a small, precise hand that barely changed over the entire period. Every trip, every destination. Danny flipped through them slowly. The destinations repeated. Tulwick appeared constantly as a starting or ending point, confirming this was a local car. Columbus appeared regularly, roughly monthly, consistently. A town called Marin appeared frequently in the early years and then stopped appearing entirely after 1989. Various other Ohio towns. 2 trips to Pennsylvania, 1 to Kentucky in 1997. Every entry included a note column. Most notes were practical. Oil change due, new wipers fitted, checked brakes. But scattered through the record in the same small, precise hand were other notes, brief, unexplained. Things like, saw the house, still the same, or didn't stop this time, or appearing 3 times in different years, simply not yet. Danny set the driving logs down, picked up the rubber-banded bundle. It was smaller than the logs, a collection of items held together, not papers exactly, more like collected documents of different types and sizes. A folded newspaper clipping, yellowed, a business card with a handwritten phone number on the back that was different from the printed number, a torn piece of notebook paper with 2 names and a date, and a laminated card that looked like an identification of some kind, not a driver's license, something else, something institutional, the lamination yellowed and beginning to separate at the edges. He was about to look at the laminated card more closely when he noticed the photograph at the bottom of the glove box. He picked it up, he turned it over, and his hand stopped moving. The photograph was of a man, middle-aged, maybe 50, maybe less. It was hard to say from the image quality and the age of the print. He was standing beside a car, not the Volvo, a different car, older, a sedan of some kind that Danny couldn't immediately identify. He was not looking at the camera. He was looking at something to the right of the frame, and his expression was the expression of someone who doesn't know they're being photographed. Unguarded, carrying something. Not sad exactly, but the expression of someone in the presence of a weight they have been carrying long enough that it no longer surprises them. The specific expression of a particular kind of endurance. On the back of the photograph, written in the same small, precise hand as the driving logs, Tulwick, August 1989. He still comes back. Danny looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he looked at the driving logs. At the entry for August 1989. Found it, August 14th, Tulwick, 2.3 miles, 8:47 a.m. Note column, saw him, didn't approach. He put everything back in the glove box. Sat in the driver's seat of the 1987 Volvo for a moment, looked through the cracked windshield at the back wall of Lot 7. Then he picked up his phone and did what he always did when he found something he didn't understand. He looked it up. He started with the name he found on the laminated card. The card turned out to be an employee identification from a company called Callum and Associates, which had operated in Columbus, Ohio, as a mid-sized accounting firm from 1971 until its dissolution in 1991. The name on the card was Robert Callum, the man whose estate had included this car, the man Greg had bought it from 11 months ago. The photograph on the card showed a younger version of the man in the glove box photograph. Same jaw. Same way of holding himself. Slightly younger, more certain in the expression. This was Robert Callum in his 40s. The glove box photograph was Robert Callum in his 50s, standing in Tulwick in August 1989, photographing someone who came back to a town. Danny looked at the two newspaper clippings. The first was from the Columbus Dispatch, dated March 1986. A business story. The dissolution of a partnership. Callum and Associates splitting from a larger firm, establishing independently. Robert Callum named as the departing partner. Standard business coverage, the kind that fills the middle pages of a business section. Nothing remarkable on the surface. The second was from a smaller paper, the Tulwick Courier, which Danny recognized as the local paper that had been folded into a regional publication sometime in the 2000s, dated September 1986. This was not a business story. It was a missing persons notice. A man named Gerald Fetch, 44 years old, of Tulwick, Ohio, had been reported missing by his family in September 1986. He had last been seen leaving his workplace on a Friday afternoon. His car had been found 2 days later at a rest stop on the interstate, unlocked, keys inside. No signs of foul play. The case was open. Anyone with information was asked to contact the Tulwick Police Department. Danny read it twice. Then he looked at the torn piece of notebook paper with 2 names and a date. The names were Robert Callum and Gerald Fetch. The date was July 14th, 1986. He didn't tell Greg immediately. He wasn't sure why. Some instinct about the specific nature of what he was holding, the sense that the clipboard and the auction list and the standard procedure were the wrong container for this particular situation, made him wait. He finished cleaning the car. He did it thoroughly, the way he always did. Vacuumed the carpet, cleaned the glass, treated the dashboard, conditioned the seat fabric. He worked carefully around the glove box, which he closed without disturbing its contents further after replacing everything he had removed. He drove home that evening thinking about Robert Callum, an accountant, a man who had kept meticulous driving logs for 38 years, a man who had, in those logs, recorded trips to Tulwick, to a town he had apparently not lived in, with a regularity that suggested purpose rather than coincidence. A man who had, in August 1989, 3 years after Gerald Fetch disappeared, been in Tulwick, photographed someone he described as still coming back, and not approached them. He still comes back, present tense. Gerald Fetch, who disappeared in September 1986, was still coming back to Tulwick in August 1989? Or was the photograph of someone else entirely? What happened next, no one who knew Danny Reeves would have predicted. because Danny Reeves was not especially curious by nature. He did not go looking for things, but he had found something, and the thing he had found had a shape that he could not stop tracing in his mind, and the shape of it was the shape of something that needed a resolution. He started looking. He started with Gerald Fetch. The 1986 missing persons notice in the Tulwick Courier was the oldest record he could find easily. But the Courier's digitized archive went back to 1979, and he searched it for both names, Callum, Fetch, across the full range. Robert Callum appeared in 2 business items, both from the early 1980s, both relating to accounting work done for local businesses. Nothing personal, nothing dramatic. Gerald Fetch appeared more frequently, the missing persons notice. A follow-up piece, 6 months later, noting the case remained open. And before any of that, going back to 1979, a series of items in the local news section. A school board meeting where Gerald Fetch had spoken. A fundraiser for the volunteer fire department where Gerald Fetch had been a major donor. A photograph from a 4th of July parade. A group of people on a float for a local business, and in the back row, a man identified in the caption as G. Fetch, grinning at the camera with the unself-conscious ease of someone who had lived in a place his whole life and expected to keep living there. Danny looked at the photograph, looked at the glove box photograph on his phone screen beside it. Different men. Gerald Fetch was heavy-set, light-haired, the face of a man who had spent his life outdoors. The man in the glove box photograph was leaner, darker, with the posture of someone who used to be more certain of things. These were not the same person. So who was the man Robert Callum had photographed in Tulwick in August 1989? And what was the connection between Robert Callum and Gerald Fetch that warranted a piece of notebook paper with both their names and a date? Danny thought about the note column in the driving logs. Not yet. 3 times, different years, no other context. Not yet what? Not yet the right time? Not yet enough information? Not yet willing to do whatever the alternative to not yet was? He searched for Robert Callum more broadly. Robert Callum had been, from what Danny could piece together, a successful accountant in Columbus for approximately 20 years, from the early 1970s until the dissolution of Callum and Associates in 1991, which had apparently been the end of his professional career in any formal sense. After 1991, he appeared in no business records, no professional directories, no public filings of any kind. He had continued to exist. He had died in 2022 at 81, which was documented in the estate proceeding that had brought his car to Harman Motor Sales. But between 1991 and 2022, Robert Callum had apparently lived with the thoroughness of someone who had decided to stop being findable. No social media, obviously. He was too old for that to be significant. But no property records either, which was unusual. No registered vehicles after 2022, which meant the Volvo had been his car for a very long time, without being registered in his name in recent years. No voting records after 2003. He had stopped being findable in the same year his accounting firm dissolved, the same year that was 5 years after Gerald Fetch disappeared. Danny sat at his kitchen table with his laptop and a cold cup of coffee and thought about this for a long time. He was not a detective. He had no training in any of this. What he had was a clipboard habit and a tendency toward systems and the specific discomfort of someone who has found something that doesn't fit into any existing category and cannot put it back. He called his cousin, Priya, who worked for a regional newspaper in Columbus and whom he called approximately 4 times a year, never to ask for anything, which was why he thought she might actually help him when he asked. Priya called back the next morning. Danny was at the dealership in the break room with his first coffee when his phone rang. "Gerald Fetch," she said without preamble. "You want to tell me why you're asking about Gerald Fetch?" "I found something in a car I was cleaning." "What kind of something?" "The kind that has his name on it along with someone else's name and a date and 38 years of driving logs." Silence on the line for a moment. Then, "Okay, so here's the thing about Gerald Fetch. He's not actually missing." Danny set down his coffee. "What?" "He wasn't missing, or he was officially for about 3 years. But there's a follow-up story that never ran in the Tulwick paper because the Tulwick paper folded before it could. I found it in our archive from a regional stringer, 1989. Gerald Fetch resurfaced. Not publicly, not officially. He never went back to Tulwick, never filed to have himself removed from the missing persons registry, which technically means he's still listed. But he contacted a family member in 1989. The family member, his daughter, confirmed he was alive, chose not to return. The daughter declined to explain further to the press. Danny looked at his hands around the coffee cup. "His daughter," he said slowly. "Yeah, she would have been, let's see, the 1986 notice says he was 44, so born around 1942, which means his daughter, if she was in her 20s when she talked to the press in 1989, would be in her 50s now," Danny said. "Approximately. Why?" Danny thought about the driving logs. Columbus, monthly. Maren, frequently until 1989. A town called Maren where someone had stopped going after 1989, the same year Gerald Fetch had contacted his daughter. "Do you know where she is?" Danny said. "I know where she was in 1989. Whether that's still current, that's a different question." "Can you find out?" Priya was quiet for a moment. "This better be a good story," she said. "I think it might be," Danny said. It took Priya 4 days. Danny spent those 4 days at the dealership, cleaning other cars, thinking about the Volvo in Lot 7. He had told Greg the glove box had some personal effects that should be retained before the auction. Standard procedure when estate vehicles came in with personal items, nothing unusual. Greg had noted it and moved on. Danny had not told Greg what the personal items were. He thought about Robert Callum driving to Tulwick every August for decades, taking a photograph, writing, "He still comes back," watching a man who was officially missing live some kind of life, not in Tulwick, but near enough to come back sometimes, the way people come back to places they left, not to stay, just to look. He thought about the note in the logs. Didn't stop this time. This time implied other times. Other times implied a history of arriving at a decision point and not crossing it. 30 years of not crossing it. What had Robert Callum known about Gerald Fetch's disappearance? What was on that piece of notebook paper? The 2 names, the date, July 14th, 1986, 2 months before the official disappearance in September. The accounting firm dissolution in 1991, 5 years after Fetch disappeared. What had Callum been doing in those 5 years? Why had he dissolved the firm? Why had he become unfindable in the same year? Danny had a theory. He didn't say it out loud because saying it out loud would make it either real or wrong, and he wasn't ready for either. He waited for Priya. She called on a Tuesday morning. "Her name is Linda Fetch Mauer," Priya said. "She's 58. Lives in a town called Harwick, about 40 miles from Tulwick. She's been living there since 1994. Before that, she was in Maren, which I'm guessing is the town in your driving logs." Maren, the town that appeared frequently until 1989 and then stopped appearing entirely. Robert Callum had been visiting Maren until the year Gerald Fetch made contact with his daughter. Until the year his daughter presumably moved away from the place she had been reachable. After that, Callum had visited Tulwick, watching the man who still came back, watching and not approaching. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Until he died in 2022 at 81, having never crossed whatever line he had spent 38 years standing at. "Does she know about Callum?" Danny asked. "I didn't mention him. I said I was following up on an old case for background research. She was guarded, but she talked. She knows her father is dead. He died in 2011, she said. She went to the funeral. It wasn't in Tulwick. She hasn't been back to Tulwick since 1986. Why did he leave? Danny said. Did she say why he left? A pause. She said she didn't know the full story. She said he told her in 1989 that he had done something he wasn't able to undo and that the only thing he could do was be somewhere else. She said she spent 20 years trying to understand what that meant and eventually decided she wasn't going to find out and made her peace with it. Danny was quiet. She said one other thing, Priya said. She said that in 1989, when he called, he mentioned a name. A man he said knew what had happened. A man he said he trusted to have done the right thing with what he knew, even if neither of them could say it out loud. Robert Callum, Danny said. She didn't say the name to me, Priya said. She said she didn't remember it. But yeah, I think so too. Danny called Greg that afternoon and asked for a personal day the following Thursday. Greg gave it to him without asking why, which was one of Greg Harmon's better qualities as an employer. On Thursday morning, Danny drove to Harwick. Linda Fetchmauer lived in a small house on a residential street, the kind of street that looked the same in every small Ohio town. Vinyl siding, two-car garage, a flower bed along the front walk, maintained with the steady attention of someone who finds outdoor work satisfying. She was 58 years old, and she had her father's build, substantial, outdoor-looking, and her own expression, which was the expression of someone who had spent a long time managing what she let people see and had gotten very good at it. She let him in. She had agreed to the meeting after Priya had made a second call, explaining that Danny had found something in an estate vehicle that might be relevant to something she had been trying to understand for a long time. Linda had asked 2 questions. Was her father in trouble? And was Robert Callum alive? The answers, no and no, had satisfied something. She had said, "Come Thursday." Danny sat at her kitchen table. He was getting accustomed to kitchen tables as the setting for this kind of conversation, and he placed the glove box contents in front of her. The driving logs, the laminated ID, the clippings, the notebook paper, the photograph. She picked up the photograph last. She looked at it for a long time. At the man standing beside the car, not knowing he was being photographed, carrying his weight in the specific way her father had carried his weight. She turned it over, read the handwriting on the back, set it down. He was watching him, she said. For a long time, Danny said. The logs go back to 1984. He was going to Marin when you were still there. Then, after 1989, he was going to Tulwick. My father came back to Tulwick sometimes, she said. I knew that. He told me. He said he needed to see it, that it was his town, and he needed to see it sometimes, even if he couldn't be in it. Do you know why he couldn't be in it? She was quiet, not hesitating, thinking about how much to say. The same calculation Margaret Oughton had made in a kitchen not entirely different from this one. He told me the minimum, she said finally. In 1989, when he called, he said that in the summer of 1986, he had been involved in something he was ashamed of. That a man had been cheated, that my father had known about it and hadn't stopped it, and that made him part of it in a way he couldn't live with in a town where the man he'd failed to protect was still living his life. Robert Callum, Danny said. Was he the man who was cheated? She looked at him. You figured it out. Not all of it, but some of it. She nodded slowly. My father worked for Callum's accounting firm for 6 years, 1980 to 1986. He was a senior clerk. He knew the accounts. He knew everything that went through the firm. She paused. In the summer of 1986, he found out that a partner in the firm, not Callum, a different partner, had been systematically diverting funds from client accounts. For years, significant amounts. The partner had been building a parallel business on other people's money. And your father knew. My father found out. In July 1986, he went to the partner with what he'd found. She looked at her hands. The partner told him that if he said anything, he would make certain that my father looked like the one who had been doing it. He had arranged the paperwork that way. My father's signature was on documents that would implicate him if they were read by anyone who didn't understand how they'd gotten there. Danny thought about the notebook paper. 2 names, a date, July 14th, 1986. The date Gerald Fetch had found out. The date he had gone to the partner. The date the partner had told him how it would go. He left because he was afraid, Danny said. He left because he thought the only alternative was prison, she said. Or worse. The partner had connections, real ones. The kind that reached into places my father didn't understand and didn't want to understand. She paused. He called me in 1989 because he wanted me to know he was alive. He didn't tell me where he was. He told me he had trusted someone to do the right thing with what he knew. He said this person was honest, that he believed this person would find a way. But Robert Callum dissolved the firm in 1991. Yes. And then he became unfindable. Yes. Because the partner died in 1993, she said. Heart attack. That's what the death notice said. She looked at Danny. My father found out in 1994. He called me that year too. He said it was over, but that he still couldn't come back. That too much time had passed. That the life he had left behind in Tulwick wasn't his life anymore. The kitchen was quiet. Through the window, the flower bed along the front walk was visible in the October light. What did Robert Callum keep? Danny said. In all those years of watching, what was he keeping? She looked at the driving logs. He kept the evidence, she said quietly. That's what my father meant when he said he'd trusted someone to do the right thing. Callum had the original documents, the accounts, the redirected funds, the paper trail that proved what the partner had done and proved it wasn't my father. He kept them for years, in case they were ever needed, in case my father ever wanted to come back and clear his name. But he never used them. My father never asked him to. My father never came back. She touched the edge of the driving logs. And Callum just kept watching, kept the evidence, kept coming to Tulwick to see that my father was still coming back. A kind of, I don't know, a kind of vigil. Danny thought about 38 years of driving logs, about not yet written 3 times in different years, about a man who had parked his car outside a town and watched and waited and never crossed the line because the person he was waiting for never asked him to. Where are the documents? Danny said. The original evidence. If he kept them, where are they? She looked at him. Neither of them spoke. He went back to the dealership on Friday morning. He went directly to Lot 7. The Volvo was still there, cleaned now, the dark blue visible, the price tag still in the windshield. He got into the driver's seat. He sat for a moment, looked at the glove box. He had replaced everything. The logs, the clippings, the photograph, the laminated card, the notebook paper. All back in the glove box, binder clip and rubber band in place. But there was something else he had not properly examined. In the center console, along with the mint tin and the key that didn't belong to a car. The key. He opened the center console, picked it up. It was small, brass, with a number stamped on the bow, the kind of key used for a safe deposit box. The number was 47. Danny turned it over in his fingers. He thought about what Linda Fetchmauer had said. He kept the evidence. He thought about Robert Callum, who had dissolved his firm in 1991 and become unfindable and driven to Tulwick every August for 30 years and written not yet in a driving log on 3 separate occasions. He thought about a man who had been keeping something safe for a very long time, waiting for the person he was keeping it for to ask for it. The person had died in 2011 without asking, and Robert Callum had died in 2022 with a key in his center console, and 38 years of driving logs in his glove box, and a photograph of a man who had never known he was being watched over. He called Linda Fetchmauer that afternoon. She answered on the second ring. He described the key. The number. The brass. She was quiet for a long time. "Safe deposit," she said. "Yes. He had a safe deposit box." "I think so. The key has a number but no bank name. It could be anywhere." "The Columbus trips," she said. "In the logs, every month." Danny flipped through the logs. Columbus. Monthly, almost without exception, from 1984 to 2021. The last Columbus entry was November 2021, 13 months before Robert Callum died. "There'll be a bank in Columbus," he said. "Box number 47. Whatever's inside, it's been there since at least 1984. 40 years, she said softly. "At least." The line was quiet for a moment. Outside the dealership window, a customer was walking the lot, looking at the vehicles in the afternoon sun, the ordinary commerce of a used car dealership proceeding around the specific extraordinary weight of this conversation. "My father spent 25 years living somewhere else because of what that partner did," Linda said. "He died without coming home. He died without clearing his name. He thought it was too late." "Maybe it wasn't," Danny said. She was quiet again. He could hear her breathing. "I'll come to Columbus," she said finally, "if you'll come with me." They went on a Saturday. Danny drove. He had the key in his jacket pocket. Linda sat in the passenger seat with her hands in her lap, looking at the highway, not talking much, which was fine. Danny was not a person who felt the need to fill silence. They found the bank from the address that appeared in the Columbus driving log entries. Robert Callum had noted it twice, in different years, as a destination, using only the street address rather than a name. But the street address matched a branch of a regional bank that had operated continuously since the 1970s. The branch manager was a young woman who approached the situation with the careful competence of someone handling a matter outside the standard procedural categories. An estate key, a deceased account holder, a family member claiming connection. She made 2 phone calls, consulted a supervisor, checked 3 documents, and then led them through a door and down a short hallway to the vault room. Box 47. Danny handed Linda the key. This was hers. He had found it, and he had traced it, and he had driven her here, and the rest of it was hers. She put the key in the lock. The box opened. Inside, a large envelope, sealed with tape in the way of someone who expected it to be sealed for a long time. Thick, the thickness of several documents. On the front, in Robert Callum's small, precise handwriting, "For Gerald Fetch, when he is ready, and for whoever helps him get there, if he is gone." Linda picked up the envelope, held it for a moment without opening it. Then she looked at Danny, the specific expression of someone in the presence of something they have been moving toward for a very long time and have just arrived at. "He kept it," she said. "He kept it the whole time." "Yes," Danny said. "He never gave up on my father." "No, he didn't." She held the envelope against her chest for a moment. Danny looked at the empty box, at the vault room around them, at the ordinary fluorescent light of a bank in Columbus on a Saturday in October. Some things wait in deposit boxes for 40 years. Some debts of loyalty outlast everyone involved in them. Some vigils are kept by one person for another person who never knows they're being watched over, and the watcher dies without the watched ever finding out. Except when someone reaches into a glove box on a Thursday afternoon in Lot 7 of a dealership in Tulwick, Ohio, and finds 38 years of driving logs and a brass key. The legal process that followed took time. It always does. The documents in the envelope were exactly what Robert Callum had described in the memo Danny found later, a written account dated 1988, prepared and notarized, describing what Gerald Fetch had told him in July 1986, the redirected funds, the partners' methods, the way Gerald Fetch had been implicated by the forged documentation, names, dates, account numbers, the specific anatomy of what had been done. The partner was long dead. No criminal proceeding was possible. But the civil record, the financial record, The question of what had been taken from clients and where it had gone was a different matter. The documents opened a pathway that the estate of the partner, which still existed and still held assets, had not anticipated being opened. More importantly, they cleared Gerald Fetch's name. Not in a courtroom. There was no courtroom now, no proceeding that required his defense, but in the record, in the documented account of what had happened and why he had left and what he had been afraid of. His daughter had that now. She could do with it what she chose. Linda Fetch-Mauer chose, in the end, to donate the documents to a regional archive of Ohio business history at a Columbus university. Not for any particular practical purpose. The time for practical purposes had passed. But for record, for the documentation of what had happened to be part of a permanent collection that anyone could eventually access. She asked that her father's name appear in the finding aid, Gerald Fetch, that he be described accurately as a man who had discovered a fraud, been threatened into silence, and spent 25 years living somewhere else as a consequence. She asked that Robert Callum's name appear too, as the man who had kept the evidence for 40 years in case it was ever needed. The archivist noted both names, added them to the finding aid. The collection was catalogued in the spring. Danny drove back to Tulwick the same afternoon he and Linda returned from Columbus. He had been gone most of the day. He got back to the dealership at 4:30, half an hour before closing. Greg was in the office doing end-of-day paperwork. He looked up when Danny came in. "Get everything sorted?" Greg said. "Yeah," Danny said. "I think so." "The Volvo ready for auction?" Danny thought about Lot 7. About the dark blue car with the rust at the wheel arches and the driving logs in the glove box and the key that was no longer in the center console, which he had given to Linda and which was now wherever Linda kept things she was not ready to let go of. "Ready," he said. He sat down at the spare desk and finished his condition report for the Volvo. He noted the rust, the cracked windshield, the brake light. He noted the interior condition, the worn seat fabric, the faded carpet, the clean state of it, the evidence of sustained care over decades. In the notes section he wrote, "Long-term single-owner vehicle, well-maintained throughout. Personal effects removed and returned to family, ready for auction." He saved the report, closed the laptop. Outside, the dealership lot was quiet in the early evening light, the cars in their rows, the price tags in the windshields. The ordinary inventory of a used car dealership in a small Ohio town, each vehicle with a history the next owner would never fully know. The 1987 Volvo in Lot 7 would be sold at auction in 2 weeks for $900 to a man in his 30s who was looking for a reliable winter car and had heard that old Volvos ran forever if you maintained them. He would drive it for 4 years. He would find nothing in the glove box except the owner's manual, which Danny had left because it seemed like the thing that belonged there. He would never know what else had been in that box. He didn't need to. Danny thought about Robert Callum sometimes afterward. Not constantly. He was not a person given to sustained dwelling on things, which was the other side of the coin from his systematic nature. But sometimes, cleaning a car, his hand would reach toward a glove box, and he would have a moment of awareness about what might be in there, about what ordinary objects hold, about the specific patience required to keep something safe for 40 years on the chance that it will eventually be needed. He thought about what Linda had said at the vault, holding the sealed envelope. "He never gave up on my father, a man who had dissolved his firm and become unfindable and driven to Tulwick every August and written 'not yet' in a driving log 3 times in 30 years and kept a brass key in his center console. A man who had kept a vigil for a person who never came back, who had maintained faith in the possibility of a resolution that never arrived while he was alive to see it, and then died with the key still there, still in the console, still waiting." Danny thought that was one of the lonelier things he had ever considered. And also, in some way, he couldn't entirely articulate one of the more faithful. He kept doing his job. He had a system. He was good at it. He cleaned cars with the thoroughness that Greg Harmon appreciated, and he filled in his condition reports, and he noted everything that was there and everything that wasn't. He never stopped checking glove boxes carefully, just in case. Have you ever found something that turned out to be the end of a story someone else had been living for decades without knowing it? Have you ever been the unexpected last piece of something that started long before you arrived? Drop your story in the comments. And if you believe that ordinary objects sometimes carry extraordinary things, subscribe. There are more stories like this one. More people who kept something safe because they believed, even without proof, that the moment for it would come. Patience like that deserves to be remembered. End of story. The Glove Box. 50,000 characters. Original work. Linda Fetchmauer sent Danny a message 3 months after the Columbus trip. A short one, the kind of message people send when they have been thinking about whether to send it for some time and have finally decided to. She said the university archive had confirmed the collection. She said the finding aid was live. She had looked it up and read her father's name in it, and Robert Callum's name, and the description of what the collection contained. She said it was strange to see it there. Strange in a good way. The permanent record quality of it. The way a name in an archive is different from a name in a memory. More fixed, more public, more resistant to being forgotten. She said she had gone back to Tulwick, not to stay, not even for a full day. She had driven there on a Sunday morning in December when the town was quiet, and she had parked on the main street and walked around for an hour. She had gone past the street where she had grown up, past the house that was someone else's house now, painted a different color. She had stood outside the building that had been Callum and Associates' office, a chiropractor's office now, the sign entirely ordinary, the brick of the building entirely unchanged. She had walked back to her car and driven home. She said, "I don't know if my father would have wanted me to go. I think he would have. I think he spent 25 years wanting to go and not being able to, and I went for both of us." Danny read the message in the break room at the dealership with his morning coffee. The lot outside was visible through the window, the cars in their rows, the price tags, the frost on the roofs from the overnight cold. He wrote back, "I think that's right. I think he would have wanted that. He meant it. Greg sold the dealership in the spring. Not because it wasn't working, but because an offer came in that was fair. And Greg was 53, and his wife's family was in Arizona, and the Ohio winters had stopped being something he felt like managing. He sold it to a regional group that ran 6 other dealerships in the state. They kept most of the staff. They kept Danny. The new manager was a woman named Carla who had been running a dealership in Dayton for 8 years and who had the particular energy of someone who knew exactly what she was doing and expected the people around her to know what they were doing too, which suited Danny fine. She reviewed his condition report system on her second week and told him it was better than anything she'd seen at the other 5 locations, and asked if he'd be willing to write up the process so it could be standardized across the group. He wrote it up. They standardized it. He was still a detail technician. He still cleaned cars. He still had a system. But the system had an addition now, a line in the glove box section of the interior assessment form that had not been there before. After the standard items, owner's manual present, registration documents, insurance card, there was a new line. Other contents. Describe fully. Not because he expected to find something significant again. He didn't operate that way. He didn't go looking for things. But because he had learned, one Thursday afternoon in Lot 7, that glove boxes were not always empty of everything that mattered. That sometimes a car carried more than its condition report accounted for. That the thorough way to do a job and the right way to do a job were the same way. And both of them required looking carefully at what was actually there rather than what you expected to find. He checked every glove box, every time. The Volvo had gone to auction and been sold and driven away and was someone else's ordinary, reliable winter car now. Its history was its own. The driving logs were in Linda's keeping. She had asked if she could have them, which Danny had passed on to the estate lawyer handling the Callum matter, and the lawyer had said yes, they were personal effects with no bearing on the estate proceedings. She was welcome to them. She had said she was going to keep them. All 38 years. She was going to read them, not quickly. She was going to read 1 year at a time, slowly, as if she were accompanying Robert Callum on the trips he had made, understanding what he had seen and what he had noted, and what the small, precise handwriting in the note column meant as it changed over decades. She had said, "There are things in there I want to understand. About what loyalty looks like when it lasts a very long time, about what it costs, about what it means to keep watching for someone even when you know they're not going to turn around and see you." Danny thought about that sometimes. About the specific kind of faithfulness that drives to Tulwick every August for 30 years. That writes "not yet" in a log and keeps going. That maintains a deposit box at a Columbus bank for 4 decades and renews it every year and puts the key in the center console of a car that it drives to Tulwick to watch a man who doesn't know he's being watched. That is still there when the car ends up in Lot 7 of a dealership and a 26-year-old detail technician reaches into the glove box on a Thursday afternoon. Still there, still waiting, still pointing somewhere, still carrying what it was always carrying, patient as metal, patient as paper, patient as a brass key with the number 47 on the bow. Some things travel the distance they need to travel. Some truths wait for the right hands. Danny Reeves had not been looking for any of it, but he had looked carefully when he found it, and that, in the end, was enough.